On this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds, we're joined by Kagan of Kagan Productions to talk about the hero's journey in Kickstarter marketing. We talk about core needs, frustrations, challenges, and solutions, whilst developing avatars for your superfans, defining your core strengths of your game, and then all modeling it after the screenwriting tactic of the hero's journey. Let's get into it.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Lightning bolt, Facebook ad, Facebook ad.
That's awesome.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean and not Rick. In place of Rick, we have somebody who is, about the same quality in the amount of beauty in the face, but it's Ori Kagan.
Hello.
Welcome, Ori. What do you think about that introduction?
I'm not used to that one.
It's like comparing the level of attractiveness between you and Rick. I'd say about the same.
The funny thing is, I have a pretty high percentage of face blindness. It's something anyone that has met me at a convention and then met me again and saw my puzzled expression as if I don't recognize them. So they know this about me. I have a very high percentage of face blindness. I have a hard time re-recognizing people until I've met them at least 3 or 4 times. Unless they have a very defining factor, like, huge pair of glasses. And the funny thing about this is I don't really remember my own face.
Well, it's just like, what is that what is that series? I feel like we're gonna just have to cut this from the podcast because I'm not gonna remember. Divergent. You would be a part of that group that doesn't look at the mirror very much, which I now can't remember either. Abnegation. Anyway.
I was thinking of 50 First Dates, but anyway.
Okay. My wife has a high percentage of face blindness because my face is rather ugly and my head is like malformed, like all these bumps everywhere. And she loves me anyway. So she's awesome. So let's get into number 1, the topic, and then number 2, your expertise. But we wanted to talk about storytelling as marketing and storytelling in marketing. So, and also just simply storytelling marketing, right? So these 3 concepts that are all intimately related are actually something that is very, very important for design, especially people in entertainment, board games, video games, and the like, to know, because it's really what we do all the time. And so the concepts we're going to be going over, we're going to talk about like how to make a super effective Kickstarter story or game found, right? Internal marketing versus external, and why, your people, like how to kind of, Ori doesn't like this word, we talked about this, convince your people to up their pledge amounts, and then also de-risking a Kickstarter, which is an Ori Kagan, I want to say, trademark now. So before we get into all that, Ori, just give us a little bit of expertise about, or share a little bit about yourself and your expertise. I know you've been on our podcast before, but for those that are not familiar with who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Andrew. So I'm Ori. I am head of Kagan Productions, where we make Kickstarter trailers. And yes, we had the pleasure of being on the podcast on 2 episodes, talking about like the 2 different spectrums of how you can do a trailer, either low budget or very high budget. And, I've been doing this for 6 years now, and over like 21 million already on all my campaigns combined. And I've seen so many different campaigns, successful ones that failed, that really frustrated me. And I really had a hard time with campaigns because I could see that creators go through so much work on trying to create like their game and then their campaign and their marketing and all of that. And then having them launch and crickets, fails, nothing goes anywhere. And I was just like, what happened? Why didn't it work? Everything looks so amazing. I've played the game. I know it's good. I put so much effort into the video as well. And I sort of put it as a mission to figure out what makes Kickstarters work, what makes them tick in a way, and how can I recognize that early?
Yep.
Because, I'm putting all this effort into a video. I want them to yield results from that. I don't want all that work to go for nothing. It feels like, obviously they didn't say it was like my fault or anything, but I really wanted to be like part of their success.
Yeah, I very much understand that. And it's a common discussion whenever, you and David Diaz, who's another great friend of ours, and we get together. I mean, I think we got together at Gamma this year, and we were talking about the value of a video and how difficult it is to quantify that value, right? It's like, I got a video from Ori and it made me $90,000 because I got the video from Ori. That's a really difficult conclusion to reach, right? Like, you spend a good amount on a video because you want your Kickstarter page or your game found, right, to be as immersive as possible. And you need those gifts that will kind of help people understand how the game is played and other things like that. But then the question that we're always asking ourselves is like, how do we quantify the value that this is bringing? Whereas if I pay $10 for, Facebook ads, I know I can get, for me, 5, 10 emails or whatever. And then it's like, okay, I'm getting I got 5 or 10 emails with that thing. Let's just say 5 emails, and they cost me $2 a piece. And so I'm expecting one of them to convert. And so those numbers are just easier to kind of do this internal math. And what I find is that, so the spoiler alert is, I think videos and spending a good amount on the video can be exceedingly valuable and worthwhile. If you know why you're making this video, it's almost like you, Ori, are this talent that I need to tap fully into and leverage in as many ways as I possibly can, because we're developing this really expensive piece of content. And if the end result is just one video file that looks amazing that I place on my Kickstarter page, or like pretty much Kickstarter Game Found synonymous, right? But if I place that on the page above the fold so that people can click it and watch it, and that's the only place that I put it, it's not worth it. I generally feel like if that's the only reason that you're getting a video is to have a button to press so that people can watch something right at that spot, you've really failed as a creator to leverage the wisdom and the expertise and the capabilities of you, right? Of Ori Kagan and Kagan Productions, or David. And I think the reason for that is because the opportunity to get so much more content is right at your fingertips. All you have to do is ask the right questions, right? Like, hey, can I get this? And you're like, oh yeah, export it. Takes 10 seconds, And so maybe what types of content do you provide aside from, let's say, like, okay, we've got the base, which is you've got the video file, the MP4 file that's all done, that's going in that spot, right? That Kickstarter above the fold spot. What other services can you offer as a part of that video package that add value?
Okay, so this is the interesting thing. I'm going to say 2 things. One of them is, I totally agree that the video can be used many, many, many different ways. Okay. And I have actually 9 different ways that you can use a video, one piece of content, and that's just practical stuff. I can list them like really fast right now if you just want me to just shoot out like all these ideas. Let me see if I can remember all 9 of them. One is, well, the main trailer. Okay. I'm not going to count that. A teaser. Warming up your core audience, getting them hyped up before you start the campaign. Running video ads is the obvious one. Okay, chopping it out to like 5 seconds or 15 seconds, running meta ads with that. Sharing with your distributors and retailers, okay? Getting them to know more about the game. This is after the campaign is funded and already starting to deliver. People are trying to figure out, do they want it at the store? So you share the video and you get them hyped up, and they don't even need to play the game. They're hyped up about the game. They want it. Showing it in conventions on screens. Once you have a booth, you can have people stop and stare at what is this thing, and they get hooked up, ask a question, and then you attract people to your booth. Which number I'm at? 5.
I'm keeping track.
I
mean, technically, you did give us 6 with the above the fold.
Okay. I had one in my mind just now. So another one would be, you share it, you have it on your website, okay, as a product video. Instead of back now on Kickstarter, you say order now. Okay. You use that as a template for the next campaign for the expansion. You don't need to make a whole new video. You're bringing people back into the world. You have that first part. Maybe add another addendum. You can add to it later. There's more. Localization.
No, GIFs was what I missed.
GIFs. I have GIFs was always on. Localization. You can use it in different languages and have it in different languages, and GIFs that you can put on the page itself. Did I get to 9?
So that's 9. Technically 9.5 because the actual video on the page.
So. I've got 2 more because you could use it on YouTube to kind of further your reach on that platform. And you can also use it on Amazon. When you eventually go to Amazon, you can include the video there.
I only have 10 fingers, Sean.
Well, those are like subs. Those I add as like subs around, like on the product page, and when you put it up on as a teaser on your social media, then obviously it should be there. But that's like practical stuff. Mm-hmm. The more interesting thing is, it's not the video that really matters. That's not really the thing that is bringing you the ROI. And that was my big sort of epiphany that I had about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now. And I realized there was something deeper at work. What I did, and spoiler alert, it was the storytelling. That's basically what is causing it. But what do I mean when I say storytelling? It's such a broad term that a lot of marketing gurus are using now. Oh, you need to do storytelling marketing. Even in Israel, they use the word storytelling in Hebrew instead of saying like something in Hebrew, because it's just it's like a popular term for quality marketing. I basically studied a lot of marketing, basic marketing 101. I started brand strategy a lot for my business as well, and sales. Those three things, I sort of found all these insights, which I put together into a framework. And I remember like the first campaign I experimented with this was with We're Sinking. A game called We're Sinking, where a ship like literally would sink into the table by removing the pieces from it. And it's like a game of betrayal between the players. And before we started working on the video, I said, we're going to do a little marketing discovery process before we even start talking about the video. And the client was like, oh, okay, sure. And I started asking questions. Why did he even make this? Well, where's this coming from? And we like dove into his childhood, and we dove into what his actual goal is for the future, and where are his challenges right now. And he was in the beginning, he was like taken aback. It's like, well, why are you asking me all these questions? But slowly he opened up, and we start like really diving into what. It's like there's like different circles, the how, what, where, and why, which is like the most important question. And out of that surfaced like all these, some people call them USPs or whatever. It's selling. I call them selling points because it's just simpler. All the selling points for the game. What makes the game actually great, actually exciting? Feedback that he got. We listed all that. Mm-hmm. And then I started asking questions about who this game is for. And we coined the term superfan. Who is the superfan? And not just talking about like general terms like age groups, demographics. No, we created a person. I created like a D&D page, and we like gave them a name. We sort of like to try to discover what their sort of, what do they hate? What do they like? What are they looking for? A little bit about their personality. Are they introverted, extroverted? Do they have kids? Do they have a family? And
that's what we would call the customer avatar, right? The customer avatar is the customer avatar, the type. And we've gone over this in the past on podcasts, but What I really love is that you turned it into a D&D character sheet. You're like, what are the
Yes,
attributes of this super fan? What is their
exactly.
name? How many
Because
children do they have? What's kids do they
and
have?
by the time we got to this point, we were already laughing. We're already talking about it. And we're like, we gave them a name, obviously, and we're talking about them all the time. And the last part, which was the most interesting, was combining those two together. Okay, taking the selling points from one end, taking the superfan on the other, and finding that bridge of which selling points will apply specifically for that superfan.
What you're in
So
essence,
that
what you're
can,
asking is it very, very simple. Like explain it like I'm 5. You're asking, why does this person like this game? Why would this person buy it? Why would a person buy this game? And those are really important questions to ask. That truth
and
be
that's the
told, a lot of
thing.
people don't make it that far. They just think I'm making this game for people like me, whether they realize that or not. They're
Mm.
subconsciously doing that. A lot of people, and they're just saying that everybody's like me and they're all going to buy it, or enough people like me are going to see the value in this that they will buy it. But that is a hypothesis. It's a good idea to test. I mean, the scientific method, you test
Mm.
the hypothesis you made rather than like, you don't want the test of your hypothesis to be the day that you actually press launch on your Kickstarter. Because what if it was wrong?
What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
So that's the beautiful thing about crowdfunding. And you talk about this all the time, that crowdfunding, you need to bring a crowd with you before you even start. And basically, that campaign was a success. And I decided to just put it mandatory, this workshop, before I start working on the video.
Mm-hmm.
And a year later, I noticed something looking back, that every single client that did this workshop and followed through had a successful campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I had no more failures after that. And the big sort of slap in the face moment came with botany, with Ducksomnium, where there we did the workshop. And then like, I want to just tell about this story and then I'll really dive into what made it work. So Dusty and Amy, the creators of Botany, they had everything planned out. They're smart people. They've run businesses before. They said, okay, we got the Dice Tower lined up. We have BGG ads planned. We're like looking at where board gamers are hanging out to target them with ads. Then I said, hold on, wait, pause. Let's do the workshop first. And then we'll see, because I don't want you to spend your money on somewhere that won't be as effective. And we did the workshop. We figured out the selling points. We called the superfan Mary, and we discovered something interesting. Mary, by far, was way more interested in pretty things, flowers, and Victoria era themes. She did not even know what a tableau builder is. She didn't know what means pick up and deliver. She didn't even have that many board games, but she was looking for something. She was a hostess. That was like the defining feature. She was a person that loves to host people, to impress them, and to have pretty things on her shelf. And it was he or she, that doesn't really matter. But because we're creating a person, we want to humanize them as much as possible. And that sort of insight gave them a aha moment where they realized they were targeting the wrong person. So they removed, and talking about ads, they removed all the board game audiences and they added Downtown Abbey. They added Bridgerton. They added like botany flower names and all of these like geeky terms. Within a week, they had 800 people sign up to their core list. And it just bloomed from there, pun not intended. And went, and
pun
I'm
was
a dad, I'm
totally
allowed.
just subconsciously intended.
It was like should I do one? Shouldn't I? Yeah, I should. So
definitely
they sort of planned on, by the end of the campaign, they said 80K, we can make this. 100K, we're happy. They made that by lunchtime. It was just such a explosive moment. And, that made me stop and think, okay, what happened here? We did the video. It was a nice video, but the video was talking directly to Mary. The page itself was built in a way where it wasn't, look at all these components. It was, look at this pretty picture first. And the language that they used was specifically de-gamified, like using game terms. The pledge levels were simple. And it just seemed like, and you could see the Marys coming in. At a certain point, they talked about it, and their audience start calling themselves Marys. And they're like, we're the Marys, and we love this game. And anyone that would like poo-poo the game on like BGG, they're like, that's such a simple, silly game. They would literally jump on them and say, leave it alone, it's our game. And they became literally a tribe. And I was like, this is what I want to create.
The Legion of Mary.
Yeah, a Legion of Marys. So I think of my service now as we don't create a video. We will create the story and the roadmap, which we will use to create the video. We will take that. But I want you to use it for your entire marketing strategy. And I want to say one more word about what you said about research, because you're totally true. What you said was totally true. Everything we do in the workshop is intuitive. And there's a few reasons for that. One, Andrew, you could say yourself, are you a fan of your own game?
My favorite game ever.
Deliverance. It's hard to create a game without being a fan of it.
Yep.
There are exceptions, but every single person I work with is a crazy fan for their own game. So I say, when we're creating the avatar, think about a reflection of yourself, but don't stop there. What do you have to do with board games to know that they are validated? You need to playtest them, right?
Yep.
And let me ask you this. Do you remember a moment while playtesting this game where you played it with someone and he finished and he looked at you and he said, I love this game. When can I get it?
Yes.
Can I buy your prototype? I need this game in my life.
Yep. For me, the defining moment was actually when I was in, I was playing on Tabletop Simulator, and I had these Germans that were from a media organization, and we played through the game. They wanted to play and kind of cover it before we launched on Kickstarter, and they told me that they would trade half the games on their shelf for this prototype to be on their shelf right now, and they were Satanists. It's like, that is, and the way that they explained it was, we are card carrying members of the Church of Satan, and we would buy this right now.
No kidding.
Like, I was very surprised. I was like, okay. I mean, I'd never heard a Satanist tell me that they just, up into that point where they identified themselves as such, and they were like, I must have this. It was like, well, why? Now I'm really intrigued. And that was a major defining moment for who my people actually are.
This is
and
so interesting.
Who I originally thought they were. And so, like I say it every so often, tongue in cheek as a joke, but it's actually true. Half our email list are like pastors, priests, and generally, Christian or religious folks. And the other half are like very often anti-religious, atheists, agnostic, as I mentioned, Satanists and Wiccans and everything else. It's like, why is it this way? And in essence, what it is like, we'll say religious people and secular people that identify themselves as such both like the game for their own reasons. And to understand what those were and why, there was much more commonality than I expected among those people. I just originally, kind of my hypothesis was like, I'm making a Christian game, so it's going to be for Christian people. Using that lore base, I figured what I would rather do is just be honest about the type of game I'm making, so that people can say, oh, this is for me or not for me based on theme or, that kind of thing. But yeah, that defining moment really changed the way that we marketed. I learned the short version. I don't want to stop and interrupt you too long, but the short version is that I found that the Christian people, the Christianity in the game wasn't enough for them to say, I'm buying this immediately. It just had to be the cherry on top of a really good game. It's like, you don't buy the sundae, the ice cream sundae for a cherry. you want the cherry on the top of the sundae, but it's not the reason. You need the bananas, you need the ice cream and the whipped cream, and if you were missing any of those pieces, well, it's not really an ice cream sundae. And you want the cherry on top, but it's just kind of the garnish at the very end. And so I found out that, like, kind of we'll say the Christian theme was the garnish rather than the main course. It's and so what I learned was, like, what we're talking about, the kind of that storytelling that you're getting at, I would liken some of what you're saying to innovation. The innovation is the most important piece, and it's what people liked about the game. It was a game that allowed you to experience this vastly well documented lore base, this Judeo-Christian lore base that is quite underrepresented in fantasy and whatnot, because by using it, it's often just preachy. It's like, we're gonna get everybody saved that opens this box. And my intent was to I just assumed everyone was going to be Christians that played this, and I made something that would just tell simply a great story. But what it allowed was those non-Christian people to approach this lore base with kind of and feel safe, because they weren't going to get preached at. So they got to experience this awesome story that, Michael the Archangel and Gabriel and all of the epic, angels and demons, in a way that is kind of rare in pop culture. And then it also allowed the Christians to have a game that they could be proud of, that wasn't cringy, that they could share with their non-Christian friends, because at the board game table, you do not separate, religions. You're not like volunteering your religion. My name is Andrew. I am a Christian. What is your name? What is your religion, Ori? It's like, no, we're here the board game table is something that unifies everyone and kind of, allows people of different beliefs, backgrounds, political ideology, religious ideology to get together. And so that's what I learned from this, and it had a dramatic impact on our marketing. It's why we became the number one game, and we sold out, and we got lots of awards and nominations and other things like that. So
that is amazing. I love this so much. It's like heaven and hell both start with an H, not that different. So that's exactly the type of insights we're looking for, because the moment they think about that person that got so excited, and then we're trying to figure out, like, what makes them tick, and you create a whole new person, and you start, like, getting onto this all, like, what do they like, what do they hate, and you're making a lot of assumptions here, but a lot of the gut feeling turns out. I've heard so many of my clients, go test this document afterwards, and they're like, it's absolutely true. Maybe a few tweaks in here. But the most important thing about mapping out a super fan for me is what I call the 4 pillars of the super fan. I don't have a better name yet. And once we finish talking about all the different, like, attributes, we just nail down to these 4 things. And those are core needs. What is your superfan actually getting from playing a game? And we dive really deep psychologically. It's like, is it social potential? Is it escapism? Is it a challenge? Is it immersiveness? Is it just a fun thing to do with his friends? Is it nostalgia? We're trying to figure out there. We also ask, when they buy a game, what are they looking for? What is, if they're now walking in a game store, what will catch their eye? Does it have to be a big, massive game, or are they looking for a cheap game? Are they looking for a short game, a long game? What are they looking for in their buying experience? And then we had to add another level to that. What are they looking for in a Kickstarter or GameFound, whatever, in a crowdfunding campaign? And we add all these core needs. And then, heaven and hell, we go to the other side. What are their frustrations? What will absolutely frustrate their, like, red flag? This is not the game for me. I mean, I imagine if I show these German people the game Botany, they'll be like, no, absolutely not. This is not for us. And it's not that there's something bad about Botany. It's just, it's not my jam. So we're trying to already map out the things we know don't apply to our game, but we want to be aware of them. What do they absolutely stay away from? for me, for example, me personally, I will not look in any game that says 3 players and up, because I would always want the opportunity to play with my wife, and I need it to be 2 players for it to see the table. So I will just avoid any game above that. So that's like a lot of games. And then we get to the tricky part. Then we get to number 3, the challenges. And challenges is something you probably know well from marketing. It's what I see something I want to buy. I look into it. I'm about to press the pledge now button, but I stop at the last second. Mm-hmm. Something in my mind is pushing back and saying, maybe that. Those are the key to figuring out why someone, we talked about convincing. Why would someone even have to say, convince me on buying something? You were telling us before we recorded a story where one of your backers said, Andrew, convince me to get your acrylic standees. Yeah. That is basically a challenge coming up.
Yep.
So how would you call that challenge? If you had to
what I always think about is this. So like in e-commerce, there are 2 major decision points that somebody will make when they're buying something. So we're checking out on Amazon. Amazon is the smartest e-commerce company in the world because they eliminated one. The decision points are when you add stuff to your cart. You're like, okay, I'm going to add this to my cart. The first decision point is begin checkout. That's when somebody will say, do I have the best price? Do I really want this? And is this something that I'm just going to think about and come back to later? It's the very first decision point. And the way to get them to kind of smooth through that decision point is to have a coupon code. Mm-hmm. If they got 5% off and free shipping, if they got 15% off, if they get to, take advantage of this particular sale that's only around, well, then I got the sale. I do have the best price, most likely. I'm moving forward. And, that's the first decision point. But then the next decision point is when they punch their credit card information in, they have their address in, everything's in, and it's like, press this button and you will burn $90 in your checking account or whatever it is, right? Or this is actually the moment of truth that you will pay for this item now. So that is when they start thinking, do I really want this? And like you said, Ori, it's very much like a subconscious psychological thing where your subconscious moves 1,000,000 times faster than your rational brain.
Yeah.
So you, and in fact, some people say we actually have 2 brains. One is the brain in our head. The other is our gut. There are things that happen in your gut that change your behavior. Things that when external forces impact you, like a lion jumps out from behind a tree, your brain isn't like, oh my goodness. It's your gut that's like, your stomach sinks into the floor or whatever, right? And like when you're watching a horror movie, it's much the same, which is why I can't watch horror movies. I'm such a baby like that. But the so I would say objections that to overcome. That's the way I call it. Objections to overcome. So they might tell you, if we were in person or at a convention, they might say, oh, let me think about it. I need to talk to my wife. I'm gonna finish this loop and then I'll come back. I'm going to get to this meeting or this, I have a game scheduled or whatever, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow. If you can simply overcome those objections while they're standing there with you, you make a sale. Mm-hmm. Or if you are able to overcome the objection when they are thinking, should I pledge here? Then you'll make a sale. And people love to justify an emotional decision they made with logic. And, but let me pause there and let you continue. So that's some of my thought. I don't know if you have any thoughts to add, Sean.
No, I just want to make sure that we are that we understand you, Ori. So you're talking about core needs, and you sort of divided those into 4 pillars. Is that my understanding correct?
No. Okay. Let me give the big picture. 4 pillars are core needs, frustrations, challenges, and solutions. Okay. Those are the core needs. With the core needs, we're like, why is he even playing? What is he looking for? What's on his mind when he wants the next big thing? The frustrations are the absolute knots, like the red flags. The challenges are exactly that you mentioned, the objections. The reason I like to call them challenges, and this is what's going to tie it in all together, because this is part of his hero's journey. Okay, we're tying this all back to storytelling. We are essentially taking our backer, let's give a name to our super fan here. I feel like we need to call him something.
Leroy Jenkins.
Jenkins. Okay, we need to bring
My
Jenkins.
super fan's name is Dave.
Dave. Okay, Dave is going to be easier for me to say. So we want to bring Dave to the promised land, so to speak, because we want to give him an amazing experience. Not just an amazing experience. This could be a life-changing experience. I've talked about this in other podcasts, and I say it all the time. I really think board games are changing lives in a way, because we all can think about a time where before and after something related to board games in the middle. You know, I bonded with my wife around board games. I mean, literally, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today without the game Star Realms, which is right behind me over there.
Yep.
So, and I think everyone has a story like that. Your game might be doing that for your Dave. You don't want to miss out on this life-changing opportunity. So you are, and this is I'm taking from Donald Miller and his book Story Brand. He places us, rather than we are the heroes of our journey. That's one way to do it. He says, no, you are the mentor. And that's in classic storytelling. We always have like the Gandalfs, the Obi-Wans, the Dumbledores, the one that help the hero during his troubles and tribulations. And that's essentially what we are doing as we lead Dave through those challenges. So so it's not objections. It's things that we know he needs to overcome, and we know he can. We already know the answers. And that's where we bring in the solutions, the fourth pillar. We take up all the challenges and we come up with solutions to them. And the solutions are already embedded in our marketing. So could you sort of give me an example for a challenge of what might stop someone from pledging now for your game, for Deliverance?
Sure. One of the most common and easiest is actually for my Dave. But is it preachy though? Is there some hidden thing that's going to happen in the middle of the campaign that is going to embarrass me in front of my friends, or that is going to push this religion on me because I'm used to that from, generally all of this type of content? That's one thing. Another very common is actually one of the main things that we're trying to combat this round is to just, we believe the product is so beautiful that it should speak for itself. So one of the problems that I run into is that when I tell people about the product, I only have so much time before their brain fills up with information, and it's like they can't really absorb anymore. And so what I've elected to do is show rather than just tell. So anything that I say is accompanied with relevant imagery, and oftentimes just I want people to see how beautiful the product is. If they can see how beautiful it is, and which they do, we've been nominated for awards in art and whatnot, and like the Golden Geeks and whatnot, but they oftentimes will say, this is so much higher quality than anything that I've come to expect from a game in this industry.
Okay, hold on. You're moving to solutions. You're moving. Okay, hold on. Let's stay.
That's my kind of there. Okay.
Let's stay in the challenges. You said preachy. Yes. The second one you mentioned is the game is what I'm calling too dense. There's just too much. I cannot figure out what this game is yet. What's another challenge? Give me three.
Quality. So I would say the quality of a game. Oftentimes these are very surface level re-themes of an existing game. Instead of Settlers of Catan, it's Settlers of Canaan. Instead of, I don't know, pandemic, it's reverse pandemic. Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the time, we'll say the past, religious games, they tend to just be rethemes of already existing games without any innovation.
Yeah.
And that's something that people kind of suss out really quick and just naturally assume is that this game is not innovative. Change my mind. Like the
Okay.
Steven Crowder meme or whatever.
So what I'm hearing is there's 3 big challenges. I assume there's more, but let's try to focus on these 3. Okay.
Mhm.
1, it's preachy. 2, it's too dense. And 3, it's just a coat of paint on something we've seen before.
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find a way to solve these problems even before they arise for Dave. Okay, so let's start with preachy. How would you solve this problem in the easiest way?
So I try to focus them on, so preachy and low quality is very, very similar, but the first thing is the intro story. So like the very first scroll, what we plan on doing is, and what we've done. So one of the big pieces of this puzzle, I think, is that Deliverance is a game that no matter how much I said, people had to just experience it. And now that it's the highest rated religious game on Board Game Geek. It's the highest rated Christian game ever made. It's the highest rated religious game ever made on Board Game Geek. Those are things that we can say. It's the
But
the highest rated Christian
if
board
I
game
may, if I
or
may,
whatever.
let's go back before the launch. I want us
Okay.
to be like in like
Yeah.
real stakes here. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have anything to lean on. How do you show that this game isn't just preachy, trying to convert you or something like that? What would be the easiest way to do that?
I think that what I would go back to is number one, the art mixed with the short story, like the very short, one paragraph. This is who you are, what you're doing, and what's wrong that you need to fix. This is you are an elite angel in the army of heaven, and you've come down to this small little town which is filled with demonic activity. And it's like immediately, it's not like, so what we do is we try to focus them on the right thing. Is who am I, and why should I care? Who am I? What am I doing, and why should I care?
But testimonials would also help
what
there.
It's not, I tell them what it is. So, and they yeah, and
Sean,
like
what,
you said,
what are you
Sean,
doing?
now we've got testimonials and things, but before that, it was, I need to, it's just like, how do I teach somebody that this $100 bill is not a counterfeit or is a counterfeit? I need to teach them what the real $100 bill looks like and the components of the real $100 bill, so that when they look at a counterfeit, they see, it's missing the strip, it's missing the ink, or whatever, it's different color. So that, the way that I apply that to this situation is I need to show them who you are, what you're doing, and why it matters, so that, and what they will find naturally is that there's no preachiness in that. And I'll take one more step. What's next? And then there's going to be no preachiness in the next thing. Right. And
hold on.
Yeah.
I think I'm just hearing something that combines all of this. And that's basically what I've seen as your solution throughout. You might not be realizing you're doing it, but you made angels cool. I think that is like the biggest factor. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks, when they see that cover image, the moment they either see that video or they see those graphics, and you're leaning on the things that you said, part of those building blocks is the art and the intro story and the action. It has such a cool factor. Yeah. And if there's one thing we can say about preachy isn't cool.
Yeah.
What does that resonate with? With everything?
It definitely does. Yeah.
So that's
what I mean. At Origins, when we had our expansion art and everything that was, on those big banners and whatnot, we were slammed busy because people would look at the art and then just be drawn in. They couldn't take a U-turn around we were at the very end of the back of Origins, and people would take U-turns around our booth, and they just wouldn't be able to continue on without stopping and asking a question or watching the game or that kind of thing. They'd make it like around one side, then around the long center, and they would see the art, and they would turn and then pause right before they exited the booth. They would stop and they would either jump on the email list or come back and ask questions or watch a game being played, or that kind of thing.
I mean, imagine if the entire game was replaced with meeples. What do you think people would say then?
It would not work.
So let's move on to the next one, too dense.
Okay.
That's one that I find very, very common because we cannot play test with every single person we want to sell the game to.
Right.
We need to somehow convey the experience of playing without actually playing. But how do you do that? There's so much in this game. Well, you said, you started answering that. You said show, don't tell. But let's like hyper focus into that. Yeah. How do you make me understand, like, what am I actually getting into without overwhelming me?
Yeah. So the first thing I think is my customer, and this is where that study into my super fan really makes a difference. One of the problems I think that I see a lot is that, I try to, or the designer will say, my game is for everybody, right? And you miss being really sharp toward one particular super fan. And so for me, I've recognized that my super fans are educated board gamers. They are not, I mean, there are two very different types of super fans, but that are uneducated people that are spouses or friends of educated board gamers that say, I want to play this, teach me this, that will never play any other board game, but for whatever reason, this is the one that they're like, I must play this, teach me how. But they have a human rule book that they can, Dave is their spouse or their friend that they can reference, right? But then for me, Dave is seasoned enough that he looks at a game that's 6 inches tall and a foot square and is not intimidated.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's, if anything, he'll look at the size of the box and say, wow, there's a lot of stuff in here, or, and that's a good thing. Somebody that says, oh no, there's a lot of stuff in here, that's not my super fan. So, so that's the first thing. And so as far as, so did that answer a piece of what it is you were getting at?
It's the beginning. It means don't be scared of it might not be a challenge at all. Maybe it's actually the opposite. You're showing them more and more info and they're like just slurping it up. It's like, we have this when, table presence. Is it a pro or a con? For some games, it's actually not that good. You don't want to intimidate them with too many pieces. It's like, oh, so I don't have room for this. So you show smaller images. For you, it feels like, you want to show them everything.
Yeah.
You want to give them a link to the rule book. You want to give them like all the keywords that they recognize and they know and they love.
So what I always do to try to kind of, so when this is true, and also if I were at a convention, we would tell them what it feels like to play. So you feel like this epically powerful angel that's just on the verge of being defeated. And
nice desperation.
Yeah. So it's like you're this extremely powerful angel that's just about to die, is how I say it a lot. But what I lead with is the innovation in the game. I ask, if I was at a convention, I would say, would you like to hear what others say they like about the game? Or what would you like to hear what reviewers praised about the game? The innovation in the game is basically the next place that I go, because one of the challenges that we run into, like I had mentioned, is that, okay, well, it's not preachy, but it's not innovative. So that's the next place we go. And there are, aside from the art, which people generally agree is, that's something that makes the game stand out, and gives the game table presence. Which we have big oversized art, like 6-inch tall angels that look really great and everything. But then it comes down to two pieces. Number one is the darkness track. How you can't, like, if you smash your strongest attack, you lose this game every single time. You have to deal with that darkness track. So that's one thing that kind of innovates in skirmish games, where you just kind of try to run away from the zombies until you can turn around and blast them all because they were all lined up perfectly for you. That's pretty much the core loop of Zombicide. So that's one thing. So you have to balance those actions against, and make meaningful decisions about how you're going to use those actions that you have. And then the second thing is the angel customization, like the character customization is really the second piece. So it's got one of the most robust character customization experiences of any game out there, because you could play a dozen, 2-3 dozen games with a single character and still every game will feel fresh because of the way that you build talents and treasure, and the way the demons are kind of custom built. It's like kind of like Diablo, where you get a new item that's randomly generated. That's almost like how the demons behave. Their behavior changes as the difficulty increases, or that kind of thing, which people really like about that. So I really like that. So those are like the two things that I lead with, is like, this is how it innovates. This is what others have said that they like about it, and that kind of thing.
So this is beautiful. You basically solved both of our 2 and 3 challenges with one solution. And one is, the answer to this game might be too dense is, that's not a problem. Okay, we'll tell you the special things, but you have so much to discover. It's not only that. So it actually gets them excited to go in this sort of discovery process, and using a lot of show, don't tell tactics. And the way to convince people that, again, convince, you see, I reverted back to the world, but the way you help them over the challenge of, this is just a dungeon crawler with angels. Well, you lead off with the most innovative things that will make even the most seasoned, like hardcore board gamers, you'll see their eyebrows perk up. The eyebrow test? You know that?
If it makes the eyebrows perk up, then
it's a way to test. It's the way to test your one-liner. If you have like a one-line way of describing your game, or if someone asks you, so what do you do? So you say that one line, and then you look at their eyebrows. If the eyebrows go like this, they're like, oh, they're interested. Sorry. If their eyebrows go up, that means they're interested and they want to know more. Okay. But if instead their eyebrows go like this, they will probably say, that's nice, and then they'll switch subjects and talk about the weather or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a very clear indicator if you manage to hook them or not. So you can test this out and see if you lead it. You start with the intro story. Okay, this is your almost dying angel on the fight of a desperate fight for survival. Okay, and it's sort of a dungeon crawler. Look at all these minis, and we have you're fighting these monsters, and then you give that intro right away to the darkness track. You skip over everything else, because they know the spiel, okay? And then they're like, oh, that's cool. And he said, not only that, you have full customization, not only of your angels, you can even the baddies, the demons, you can customize in different ways. And now they're really interested. And that they never even thought of that challenge now. They don't even think about, is it preachy, is it dense, or is it just a coat of paint? They are automatically locked in. They want to know more. Yep. Now it's a whole different conversation. And do I want to get it? It's like, do I want to get it? Do I want to get it now? And if we can jump back to the big overview of this framework, is after we finish solving all these challenges, we get to the final step. So let me just remind ourselves, we had the foundations, which is figuring out why we're doing this, what our goals are, and what are the selling points of this product. 2, figuring out the avatar of the superfan. What do they like? What do they hate? What are their challenges and what are the solutions? And then 3 is combining them together. And that's where we create the story. And how do we create the story? It's actually super simple in a way that honestly feels magical, because it works every time. Is we take those selling points from step 1, and we already know who Dave is. We can imagine them. And then we just ask ourselves, what is the number one thing which will hook him? What's the most exciting thing we can lead off with? And then what's the next one? And the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. And then we start playing around with it. It's like, with this one, this one should actually go here. And you start playing around with it, tiering them up from most exciting to least exciting. And we need to make sure of two things. One, a lot of selling points will combine to one, like, major strong one, like, accessibility, for example, is a very common one. This game, you can play it with many different people for some games, or some of them will combine. The other thing, which is more important, is that you need to go through the list in a semi, like, stream of consciousness, chronological order. Meaning, you cannot start with darkness track before you established that this is a game of you're an angel fighting demons. Okay, so
Right.
the theme should probably be really, really up top. Usually the first one is just the cover of the box. And then you're sort of creating this story, this script in a way, of the way your superfan is learning about the product. And you're leading him through these selling points until they get to a certain point. They've already bought it.
Yep.
Now they're just reading to have fun and get excited.
Yeah.
And what my clients do, they take that list. First of all, I take that list and I create the video using that as my script. I know where to start. I know where I need to go. I know what I need to hit, but I don't go through the entire list. I go through, like, maybe half of it. They take it and create the Kickstarter page out of that. They know where to start, what should be the focus of the page on the early stages, middle of the page, end of the page. Their landing page can be based on that, not the whole list, maybe just the first 5 points. An ad can be picking from the first 5. Which one should I focus an ad on? Which selling point? And it basically becomes this roadmap for everything they do marketing-wise. And it gives you this united voice that every time you're just telling the same story over and over again to the same person, so you don't get scattered.
Yep.
And it just gives that sort of sense of clarity. I just know how to sell this product now.
That's awesome. And now so I know that you have a workshop that you run people through this, or you're going to do your first kind of group workshop on this front. I expect that I told you this already, I expect it's just going to get stacked. So for those that are listening that want to do this for their own products and kind of experience this, how can they get access? How can they reserve a spot?
Well, this is, after doing this for so long, I realized, hiring me to do a video is rather expensive. We talked about this before. Even if you listen to that podcast, my rates have gone up since. I just, the team has grown and we do a lot more now. And I realized that, the video isn't actually that important. It's the story which really sells the game. And I wanted to find a way to offer just that part of the service, just this marketing strategy workshop, as its own thing, and to see if I can offer it to as many people as I can. So that's the idea where the Kagan Academy came out. that's currently how I'm calling it, the Kagan Academy. And I plan on it to being like this 12-week experience where we go as a group through all these stages. And the reason to do it as a group setting is for a few reasons. One is, this is how I built my own business. I joined one of these business development
like
groups.
A mastermind.
Yeah, like a mastermind group. And it completely changed how I do everything. Also because I had a mentor there that she led me through the process of scaling up and building a business. And 2, I had peers which were going through the same process with me. And I could talk to them, I could run things by them, and I can consult with them. And it was such a sort of a safety net for me, because I always had someplace to ask questions. I also always had like a Slack channel asking me for accountability and asking me to share my wins. And I scaled up my business 2.5 in 1 year, thanks to having this sort of framework. So this is sort of like in a sort of a mini scale. This is what I want to offer people launching a Kickstarter. And right now in 2025, that's what it's geared for. It's going to start in September. It's going to be limited to 30 people because I still want to be able to give everyone a chance to talk. But I'm hoping for this to eventually grow and to create like recorded courses. You can do it yourself, and just see how we can help more people launch and overfund their games.
That's amazing. Cool. So, just if somebody wants to get in contact with you and get on a wait list or something, they just go to kaganproductions.com?
Well, right now I can give you the link to the waiting list, so you can put it here if anyone wants to join right away. Okay. The thing is, I want you to know this is for you. I want people to feel comfortable joining, and it is a paid program. Like I said, cheaper than my video services, but it's still paid. And I also created this tool, the scorecard, called it the Kickstarter Health Scorecard, where you basically answer a set of around 30 questions, and you immediately get a score of how ready you are to launch. And not only that, you get this whole report card, which tells you, based on your answers, let's say if you ranked really low in marketing, it will give you tips in marketing that you could be doing right now to up your score. So I would recommend people just trying out, this is a free tool. You could easily use it and be done within 4 minutes. And it will just give you sort of this soundboard of where you're at in the journey. That eventually leads you to get my 5 free emails, with free emails. The 5 emails with tips for all sort of things. We have like a Kickstarter timeline. We have a few fun videos there. And it's just to get a sense of who I am. If they listen to the podcast, I hope that gets an idea. If after all that you still want to work with me, you might be my super fan. That's when you can go onto the waiting list. Okay. Sounds convoluted. If you just want to join the waiting list, I'll give you the link to that. But
right. We'll include that in the show notes for those that are dedicated enough to find our show notes and jump on board. You get rewarded with earlier position in the wait list.
But you see, this is like a major tip I want to offer, like people that are running their Kickstarter. Find how much you can activate your superfans. Because once you gather your audience, they're all sitting there waiting for the launch. I would sometimes recommend my clients, send out an email and ask them to do something and see how many people do that. And you sort of get this sort of sense of how many people will actually like jump on board and back in the first hour. If you tell them to like an image on BGG, if you tell them to, doing polls, checking, do you like this or that, or things like that, and just gauging like the agency which you can allow them to run around with, promoting your game in a way. So yeah, I'm trying to use my own tips on myself.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's one of the tough things is at the end of the day, you have to you can't do all the things. You just have to do as many as you possibly are I can remember, or you have to just say, okay, these things I'm doing, these things I'm going to let go, even though I know it would be, if I could get them done, it would be better. I just don't have the time or maybe the expertise, that kind of thing. And so I think, as the saying goes, perfect is the enemy of good enough. So
done is better than perfect.
Right. Yeah. So very good. Well,
maybe
Sean,
just before we wrap up, and Ori, you've mentioned a couple of times, but we haven't really defined it. You've brought up the term the hero's journey. Could you just maybe quickly just define what that is so people can put that in context when listening to this podcast?
Yes. So the hero's journey is a term coined by Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. But it obviously goes beyond with that. And this connects to what I do. I'm a filmmaker. I love telling stories in a way. And the hero's journey is basically a blueprint, which he said all stories have. And Hollywood has been cashing on this formula for years now. And it's the classic journey of a hero that needs to leave their known world and cross the threshold into the unknown. Okay, there's a lot of resistance there, but eventually they cross the threshold. There they meet all these challenges and tribulations, and they need to fight monsters. And think of Star Wars, think of Lord of the Rings. Those are the big ones. But any movie, romantic comedy has that. Horror movies have that.
I always think of Pilgrim's Progress as my kind of classic hero's journey. Like he finds his way to a kind of we'll say like a safe point right in the middle of his journey, and he knows now that they in Lord of the Rings they make it to Rivendell. It's like, okay, we're safe in Rivendell, but the journey's not over. We know we're going to have to venture in and cast the ring into the fires of Mount Doom.
Yeah.
But here's where we get kind of equipped now, and then so yeah, it's a very cool concept. I highly encourage people to study it.
Hold on, we didn't finish it yet. You stop right before the most important point. The reason the story exists is when the hero meets their worst nightmare. And it's like the biggest monster, the biggest enemy, and in a way, the hero is facing his own inner demons. I am your father. Frodo putting on the ring, and it's that moment where the hero goes through this sort of death and rebirth cycle, and they change. Okay, they go through a transformation, and they defeat their enemy. They defeat their worst nightmare. And it doesn't end there. This is really important. They come back home.
Yeah.
And they bring this change, this transformation they went through, this boon, he calls it, they bring it back to their community. And essentially, it's telling us that all stories are telling us about ways to improve the world. Every story is about something that changed, transformation that we need to go through, and something that we need to give back. If you combine it with marketing, and this goes to what I said about, I feel like games are changing lives. You're bringing someone through such a powerful journey. You're leading them on. It's going to be difficult. They're going to face some of their inner demons, but eventually they're going to come out and they're going to get this thing, which will not only change their lives. Games are a social activity. They will change the lives of the people around them and hopefully bring them together, create new relationships, create memories. And this is why I love board games, man. I mean, this is what it's about.
It is a lot more fun than working for, heating and air companies and things like that, which I do as well. So, it's I always tell people, whenever, one of my trade contractor clients, we do a lot of SEO marketing and, ads for contractors, and they're always asking me, should I get on Instagram? Should I get on TikTok? Should I get on Facebook and post and things? It's like, those industries are rather boring. People don't really want to, when they're checking out what's going on social media, they're not interested in hearing the 5 best things that you can do to, avoid having to call a plumber or something. They're looking for things that are inherently social and fun and interesting and engaging. Games are naturally one of the most engaging things that exists for us right now. Experiences is really what it comes down to. Like even Red Bull's not going to tell you about the quality of their product and about the how good it will make you feel. They're going to show you some idiot base jumping off of a plateau and then drinking a Red Bull afterward. And that's because it's all about the experience, right? So.
And that's the crazy part. Every other industry needs to struggle to find their story, find the hero's journey. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. With games, it feels almost like cheating. It feels easy because you're literally going through a journey every time you're playing a game, whether it's in like a small abstract game or a massive dungeon crawler.
Yep.
It's all the time something that we want to go through to transform.
That's actually why, that's the primary reason why, and the way that you explained it in this hero's journey and the kind of getting your super fan to kind of activate and recognize this is something that they can be passionate about. When people say, subscribe to our email list and get a free PDF download or get a free mini STL or, file or whatever, or enter a giveaway for a free copy of this or that. It's missing the point. People need to join the list because they're genuinely interested in the thing. They can't be tricked into making that final commitment, right? Like maybe you get them past begin the checkout with a good coupon code, but if they don't really know why they're paying $40 for the thing, they will not jump. They will they'll give you an excuse. Like they'll tell you that they're going to think about it, when in actuality they've already thought about it, or maybe they're going to think about it, but when they get off the phone or close the browser tab, do you think they think about it at all? No, right? But there was something in the subconscious that said, do not move forward. You do not have complete information yet, right?
Stories, this is another quote from Donald Miller. Stories are sense-making machines.
Yeah.
Okay? They help us to make sense of the world, a sense-making mechanism or something like that. They help us make sense of our world, or of our humanity, of who we are, who we want to be, our dreams, our hopes, our fears, all of that. And if you can frame that within a sales page, a landing page, then that sort of, what you mentioned is like marketing tactics, which feels like low-hanging, cheap shots of just like, oh, get a free thing. Oh, I want a free thing. It's all about the framing. It's all about how you start to tell your story and hook people genuinely. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, oh, I want to know what's going to happen now.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. That's beautifully spoken. And I feel like we could talk about this I could spend another 3-4 hours talking about just simply, how to put this into practice. Like I had lots of things on my list. Like I'd love to talk about the top of the page Kickstarter story, and other things like that. A million things that I could bring up, but we're just over an hour and 10 minutes into this podcast, and we definitely need to wrap. Otherwise we're going to become the Joe Rogan experience. It's 2.5, 3 hour podcast length.
Let me first tell you about aliens.
Yeah.
Last time we had to cut our podcast in half, right? Because we went too far.
Yeah, it was just great information. Well, Ori, really appreciate you jumping on this podcast and just sharing this. It's definitely kind of opened my mind a little bit. I think there's such great value in that workshop. I feel like I said, you're gonna get people that close or that stack up on that wait list, as long as they understand the value, and everybody who listens to this podcast will. So thank you for jumping on and sharing about this storytelling marketing, and just, it's really the tip of the iceberg. And I'm really excited to dive further in future episodes as well. We definitely are going to have you back.
I'd love that. I'm also trying to post a little about more insights about this on my Instagram. Sort of hard for me to put myself out there so much, but that's what I got to do. Yeah,
that's right. The noble sacrifice of putting yourself out there on behalf of your company and what it is that you do.
And that's what everyone has to do in the board game space as well.
Yep. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's have Robot Richard send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.